You would think when you lose your apartment, you lose your apartment, you're living out of a hotel, and then finally the hotel says, all right, we've had enough of your traffic, get out. And then you're living in somebody's shed, that would be rock bottom. But no, it really wasn't for me because I didn't know a rock bottom at the time, you know?
Welcome to the No Streetlights podcast. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Tim. We're veterans, here to talk about mental health, resilience, and the real struggles we face every day.
Our goal is to foster kindness through understanding. So, let's take a breath, relax, and be welcome. In today's episode, I'm sitting down with a man who's lived a profound life of service already. Steve Belisky. He's the House to Home Director in Parkersburg. He's the Shelter Liaison for PHAC, which is the Parkersburg Housing First Action Council. He's also the Director of Recovery Partnerships with West Virginia Goes Purple. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And thanks to everyone who's listening, because today we're talking about trauma, transformation, and the truth that is no matter your past, you can always change your future. So buckle up. This one is for anyone who's ever felt like the game has been rigged from the start. You're going to hear from us today. You can't control the hand you're dealt, but you can learn how to play. So, Steve, I know that you're a real hometown hero. You were an Army Ranger before you buckled up and got back in the fight for what we're dealing with today. Is that true?
Yeah. Yep.
Fantastic. Is that where you first learned that, like, you're in control of your destiny, or what did that teach you? What wisdom are you here to bring me today?
The Army gave me a lot of discipline. It got me real used to the hurry up and wait. And that's one of the biggest problem areas in my life, because like if I want to change something, I want it to change now. But I also realized that sometimes that change takes time. So sometimes I might be ready for it, but I might just have to wait for it. But
another really powerful tool that the military gave us was showing us that the person who's in charge is the person doing the work. Mm-hmm. And from where I'm sitting, you're doing a Herculean amount of work. I mean, the intro, I had to take a breath. I had to take a pause in the middle. Good heavens, man. Do you sleep?
It's rare, but yeah.
So tell me about these hats. What are you doing as the director at House to Home?
I came in end of May as the director. Before that, I worked at Clean and Clear Advantage Recovery, helping people that are just getting into recovery find their way and kind of directing them. Not really directing them, but just showing them different pathways that they can take. But that's not really where my passion was. The cold weather crisis hit in January of this year. And I started volunteering at my church, The Gathering, because we opened up as a warming station. And funny thing is, like Pastor Mel told me whenever I first started volunteering there, she's like, welcome to ministry. And I kind of just laughed at her because that wasn't really my thing, you know. But my passion changed because I seen all these people that I was at one time out there struggling with coming in broken. And I got a new perspective from it. So my passion changed from working in recovery to, all right, what can I do to help my community and help combat the unhoused crisis going on in Parkersburg? So this role came up here at House to Home, and I applied for it. And I'm a 2-time felon. I never imagined that I would even be interviewed or selected for the job. But I mean, I went in there and I gave them my pitch, and I just told them. They asked me what made me suited for this job. And I said, because I've been exactly where the people are that come in. I used to use House to Home daily. And I know how to connect with these people on a real level, and I know how to get through to them. Some of the stuff that they wanted to see change was, so before House to Home had a lot of drug activity. And I hit that role in day one. I come in and I said, no, we're not going to do that here. If you want to do that, go off the property across the street. I don't care where you go, just not on the property. we just started. We're just getting up and running with our vital records program. One of the biggest barriers to our unhoused population is they don't have their birth certificate. They don't have their social security card. So therefore they can't even get an ID. Or they might have just lost their driver's license or lost their ID, or it might be expired, but they don't have the money to pay for it. That's one of the biggest barriers that I've seen. And everybody knows you can't get a job without proper identification. So I was like, hey, let's start a program. Let's start getting these people that don't have this stuff their vital records. So that we're getting that program up and running. We're feeding people daily. We're offering shower services, laundry services, just all kinds of good things to help the community. And I know some people in the city government look at us as enabling, but they're not in here. They're not out here in the trenches seeing the resources that we're offering. Since May, I've sent 32 people to rehab and 26 have stayed and gotten clean. And now they're in sober livings across the state. So you can't tell me that I'm sitting here enabling them because I'm just showing them that I care about them. Because sometimes that's all it takes is just show somebody that you care about them and they realize, hey, maybe I'm not a lost cause.
I would be doing our military listeners a disservice if we did not talk about where your journey began, your early life and influences, and what drove you to then become an Army Ranger.
So my early life was rough, if I'm being honest. I grew up in a small town called Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, where they basically worship a groundhog.
Okay.
And my dad was a severely abusive alcoholic. He beat on my mom. And then probably about the time I was 10 years old, I realized that what he was doing wasn't right. I would purposely make him mad whenever he would come home drunk so that I would get beat on, not my mom. And then, I just fell in with the wrong crowd as a teenager. Started doing pills, smoking weed, out drinking as a, underage. I don't know what clicked in me, but something clicked in me and I was like, I just want to get away from this. I think I saw myself turning into the alcoholic version of my dad, not the abusive part, because I always promised myself that I wouldn't become that man. I would not become that man that is so angry in life that he has to take it out on everybody he loves. I saw myself becoming the alcoholic, drug addict version of my dad. And I just said to myself, you got to change something. So I walked into a Marine recruiter's office and there was nobody there. So I went right next door to the Army and there was 4 people there. And they're like, hey,
Yeah.
they're like, hey, we got you. So I joined the Army in 2004 and I served for 8 years. And that was my life for those 8 years. And then a lot of stuff happened that I don't really like discussing and like talking about. But I will say that I served my country valiantly and to the grit and to the best of my ability. And then whenever I left the Army, I joined a fire department and started serving my community there. I had a roof collapse on me and broke my back, fractured my back, not broke it, but fractured it. And I was prescribed Percocet 30s for 3 years. I went to the pain clinic one day and they said, hey, we're afraid you're going to become addicted to these, so we can't give you any more after 3 years. So I found the next best thing, which was at the time heroin. And I was a functioning heroin addict for a long time. And then one day I couldn't find any. I was just really sick and I couldn't even get out of bed, And I thought to myself, you know what, I might have a problem. So what did I do? I called my dad, ironically, my dad, who now has 25 years sober. Thank God. And I said, Dad, I need help. And he said, well, let's go to rehab. And I said, I ain't going to rehab. No, I'm sorry. Because to me, rehab means I surrender. Well, I don't know surrender at the time. You know what I mean? I don't know how to surrender. So I said, no, I can do this on my own. So I went to Walmart and I bought a 30-day supply of food and I had him drive me to our hunting camp, which is 30 miles outside of any town. And I stayed there for 30 days by myself, detoxing myself, getting my mind right and stuff like that. And at the end of the 30 days, he came and picked me up, and I still had those cravings, but I had a plan to deal with them. I met my ex-wife who lives in Marietta, and I moved down here, and everything was going great. I got a job at Marietta Memorial Hospital. Actually, I was a plant manager for Huck's Pallets for a little bit, and out fishing one night. That's how I got introduced to methamphetamine.
Oh no.
So yeah. So it went from doing real good to where'd my life go?
Yes.
I was out fishing with some of the guys from work, and I just had a really bad day, and they offered it up, and I didn't think it was a big deal. I was like, there's no way this little bubble was gonna take my life from me. No way. I'm too strong. And one time turned into two times turned into 10 times. And then next thing I know, she is telling me, listen, either you get your act together or you're gone. So I did that. I got clean. I did everything I was supposed to do. Got a really good job at Marietta Memorial in the ICU, CVICU, and then COVID hit. So it wasn't really bad in Marietta the first part of COVID, right? The second part of COVID, though, like the second wave and the shutdown and everything, like it was scary at first, because we didn't know what we were dealing with. Then we kind of had an idea of what we were dealing with. But the second part, we had a lot of patients in COVID ICU, which was on a whole nother floor. And I remember going into work, and we were coding a patient probably every other night, if not every night. And a lot of times I was the one, or the nurse was the one, sitting there holding the patient's hand while they took their last breaths, or while they passed. And that's a lot to take on mentally. I had to work on my truck one time after work. So I drove down to my buddy's house, and I was in there working on my truck. And what did he pull out? He pulled out a bubble. And I think every addict has that thing where they have something really bad going on in their life and they just want to escape it. They don't really want to deal with it. That escape comes out in the form of their drug of choice. And in that moment, they either have the want to say, no, I can deal with this on my own, or they just want to give up. Well, in that moment, I just wanted to give up, and I didn't want to deal with it. I wanted to forget it all. And that started my addiction all over again. I stayed working for a little bit, eventually quit my job. Both my jobs, actually, because I was working as a chemical dependency counselor's assistant as well. I quit both my jobs, and then I went home. So my ex-wife's family always does Christmas on Christmas Eve. So I went home on the 23rd of December, 2021. And I left home December 25th, 2021, and never went back. I know a lot of people were like, oh, well, he just up and left his family, this and that. No, I never went back because I knew that I didn't want my children to see me that way. I watched it with my dad. I know what it does to them. So I didn't want them to see me that way. I still stayed in contact with them. I had the bright idea that I was going to just start selling drugs to support my habit and make money. And that went okay for a little bit.
It usually does.
Yeah, it went okay for a little bit. I always tell people now that I'm mentoring or I'm talking to, addiction has 3 stages. It has the fun stage, then it has the fun with problem stage, and then it has the problem stage. My fun stage was over. Then I had fun with problems because my ex-wife is saying, hey, where are you at? She actually came to Parkersburg and filed a missing persons report on me because she didn't know where I was, In June of 2022, it was June 19th, 2022, I was arrested for possession with intent to deliver methamphetamine. They found 2 ounces in my car. I took full responsibility for it. Went to North Central Regional Jail. I don't want to say anything bad about the corrections in the state of West Virginia, but I will say it needs some work. And they need some training. There's a way to deal with unruly people, and the way they dealt with me was not the correct way. So I was in jail for 2 months. I got bonded out. I had to pay $2,500, $25,000. It took me 2 months to find somebody that would do that. It mainly took 2 months because my bond started off at $1 million.
That's several
Cash.
dollars.
Yeah. So I found a person that was willing to bond me out. I think mainly because she needed somebody to come out here and do what I was doing before, which was selling her drugs. I told myself, and I told my ex-wife, I said, listen, when I get out of jail, I'm not going to use. I'm going to get my life back together. And looking back, I was just telling people what they wanted to hear. I wasn't done. I wasn't ready. Because I got released on bond, and I was high before I even left the parking lot of the jail. As soon as I sat down in the car, they handed me a syringe that already had a shot mixed up for me, and it was off to the races again. And for the next year, I was just out selling drugs. You would think when you lose your apartment, you lose your apartment, you're living out of a hotel, and then finally the hotel says, all right, we've had enough of your traffic, get out. And then you're living in somebody's shed, that would be rock bottom. But no, it really wasn't for me, because I didn't know a rock bottom at the time. I got indicted in January of 23, and I went and I answered my indictment, not guilty, like my attorney told me to. Because I thought, this is only my first offense. I'm not going to get in any trouble. they're not going to sentence me to prison. They always send people to rehab on their first offense for drugs. And then I missed my status hearing in May because I was sleeping, because I'd been up for days and fell asleep. And that's what happens whenever you're speeding all the time. And then in January, a year to the day that I got arrested, January of 23, or June of 23, I'm sorry. June of 2023, I was sitting in the trap house and I heard a knock at the back door. And I remember thinking to myself, man, that's weird. Nobody ever knocks whenever they come here. They just walk in the back door. And somebody answered the door, and I heard, is Bill here? And they said, yeah, hold on. And they walked back through and they say, hey, it's the cops. And my first instinct back then was, I'm out of here. Yeah, I know how to evade. I know how, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we've had Sierra.
And yeah. So the guy walks downstairs, and they said, is Steve Belisky in there? And he said, oh yeah, he's in here. He's in the living room. So I went to the window and I was going to jump out it, but there was like 5 cop cars outside, 3 in the alley. They were ready for me.
You did the math.
Yeah, I did the math, and there was no getting out of it. And they came in, they arrested me, and they took me to jail. And I was sentenced to 1 to 15 years in prison in September of 2023. I went to prison, and I made it to prison in October, which is usually really quick for the corrections here in the state, because guys get sentenced to prison, they sit for months waiting, and they got me right in. I went and I did my intake and my classification, and they said, hey, you have to do RSAT, which is residential substance abuse treatment. I went to Pruney Town Correctional and did my RSAT program. And while I was there in January of 2024, I got called into our unit manager's office, and he said, first he asked me if I had a brother. And I said, yeah. And I was thinking maybe something happened to my brother. Maybe he was in a car accident, got hurt, something like that. And then he told me that my brother had called in and my mom had passed away. And that was hard. It was very hard for me, because my mom was one of my best friends in life. And once I got through that grieving process, because they restrict you to your unit at Pruney Town. If something like that happens, you can't leave, or they take you up to the actual restricted unit. Because Pruney Town, you literally walk out the gate and cross the main road to go to lunch and dinner and breakfast. And I couldn't do that anymore. If I went anywhere, I had to go in shackles because they were afraid I was going to try to run. But I just dealt with that by going out in the yard and lifting weights and working out and meditation, and then after I got through that grieving process is whenever I really began to change my mindset, because I never broke a promise to my mom before, and I wasn't going to start then. I also answered an indictment in Ohio for aggravated possession, and which they sentenced me to 6 months in prison over there. Ran concurrent with my West Virginia stuff.
How do you possess something? How do you aggravatedly possess? What?
So, so what it is I was an IV user. I used intravenously. It started out, I didn't start like that, obviously, because I was terrified of needles. But then once I figured out, hey, I can get way more higher than what I normally get if I do this, it was off. So I got caught with like less than a half gram, but they found my needles in Ohio. That automatically makes it aggravated possession, which is a class 5 felony.
Got it.
Yeah. So I answered that indictment, got sentenced to 6 months prison, ran concurrent with West Virginia. So I was thinking, hey, I'm good. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to make parole in West Virginia and I'm just going to go do my thing. Well, they had other plans. I made parole and I walked out of Prunytown on the 23rd of June, 2024. And Ohio came and picked me up. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. My time is done, that time's up. And they said, no, we got to take you up to CRC in Columbus just to get your inmate number. So, so they drove me up there and I was up there. I was literally in their prison for 4 hours getting my number. And then they said, all right, we're going to take you to the Greyhound station. If you've been in the military, Greyhound stations are not in the best parts of town. Like, they find the dirtiest, probably worst part of town to put it in. So CRC in Columbus drives me to the Greyhound station, and I'm sitting there, and parole in West Virginia has said, do not leave that station. Do not leave that Greyhound station, because I had to go to St. Joseph's Recovery Center here in Parkersburg after prison. They said, do not leave that Greyhound station. So I'm sitting there and my intrusive thoughts start coming in, and I'm looking around and I'm like, I know where I'm at. And then I realized I used to go 2 blocks down the road and buy drugs. And then the guy I used to buy them from drove past. There's an itch that starts happening, real kind of like a jittery nervousness. And I called my ex-wife, because even though we've both moved on, I'm getting married in October. She's engaged as well. She is still one of my best friends, and she still supports me. So I called her and I said, I need you to come pick me up. And she said, why, what's going on? And I explained it to her. And she said, we'll be right there. And her fiance drove the 2 hours to Columbus from Marietta to pick me up. And they drove me down to Parkersburg to a friend's house, a sober friend's house, because I could have went anywhere in Parkersburg to any one of my old friends' house. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm doing this right. And I went to their house overnight, and the next morning they dropped me off at St. Joseph's Recovery. And I did 50 days in St. Joseph's Recovery. I still had those friends saying, hey, you can parole here, that weren't good for me. So I decided to go to the Key Sober Living above Latrobe Street Mission. And I stayed there. And then here I am.
Fighting for the state to turn purple.
Yes. So we actually just got a proclamation from the governor turning West Virginia purple.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Before we get into the next part of the conversation, are there any old units you want to shout out, or any old teammates?
The ones that I would think about, they've all passed. So But I would like to shout out to City of DuBois Engine Company 75. I see him doing a lot of good in the community and rocking it. So keep it up, boys.
Man, that is an incredibly powerful story. So through all that, all these trials and tribulations, now you're the house to home director, and you're the director of recovery partnerships for West Virginia Goes Purple and the shelter liaison at PHAC. Can you kind of break down for me what your day to day looks like, or like what your mission and goals and could you give me the bluff? Could you give me the bottom line up front?
Oh man, my day to day, my calendar is always full. My day to day involves getting up at 6 a.m., coming into work at 6:30, picking up donuts from this place, setting up meetings with other organizations in the city to try to get as much help as I can, just dealing with people coming in that are down and out, I just hired somebody here that can really help with that because they have the same experience that I do. And then even while I'm doing everything I need to do for the shelter, I'm still doing the West Virginia Goes Purple stuff. I get a spare minute. I send an email, to the recovery centers across the state, one by one, trying to bring them on as a collaborative partner with West Virginia Goes Purple. I get people calling all the time. Hey, do you guys help with this? Do you guys help with that? And then I got to go into my books and say, no, I can't help with that, but this place helps with that. We're a shelter for the unhoused. We're going to have problems. We're going to have people that come in that don't like each other. So, sometimes it takes me saying, hey, if you want to fight somebody, we can go out in the cage backyard and we'll talk, but you're not going to fight in here. So it's a lot of putting out fires, and it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work.
Steve, I don't think I've ever seen your neck. I think since I've known you, your shoulders have met your ears.
Yeah.
And if I had to draw you from memory, you would not have a neck. It's ears and then traps and then shoulders.
It's a lot of work, but I wouldn't be able to do it without the community support I have, without PHAC. A lot of stuff that I do, I wouldn't be able to do it. I work for a fantastic board of directors. It supports every mission that I'm on. They might not pay me to do every mission I'm on, but they support it. And that's huge, because if I need to go do something for PHAC, all I got to do is give them at least like a week's heads up, and one of them's here to take over. I have a fantastic future wife that walks this journey with me. She might not be here at the shelter with me, but she has the same passion I do. And she just started her master's program. So now it's my turn to pick up and carry, you know what I mean? And that's what I was just telling her last night, when she can't give 100%, if she can only give 20, then that's where I step up and I take on the other 80,
That was the whole plot of our first ever marriage episode, so that everyone gives 100. That's just what it is.
Right. So, but she supports me.
And she's equally as terrifying. I've met her. I'd probably close the gate behind us before I went in there with her. It's not. She's a terrifying woman who is here fighting for change.
Yeah, it's really, she's a big teddy bear once you get to know her. She is. She does. She fights every day for change, She is the director of ambassador operations for West Virginia Goes Purple. You should have seen her in the cold weather crisis.
Did she have a coat? I hope she had a coat.
Yeah, she did. She did. But we all shined in that moment, right? But that's where I met her. And a lot of people have been telling us, oh, you guys are getting married too soon. You guys are getting married too soon. Well, I'm about to take on another role. I'm about to start ministerial classes to become a lay minister for the gathering.
What a blessing.
Right. So we were going to get married next year, and we decided, we want to get right with God first before, Yeah. And so we moved our wedding date up a year. I'm sorry, not a month, a year.
A year and a month.
But,
give or take.
Yeah. But if I could shine a spotlight on anybody for the gathering, or anybody that in the cold weather crisis, it would be her. And I'm not just saying that because she is my fiance. I'm saying that because I watched that woman contact every shelter. She was the one putting out all the social media posts of the needs that the gathering needed at the time. And then even whenever the gathering's cold weather shelter closed, a lot of people don't know this, but we kept another church open for people that were wanting to go to recovery and wanting to change their lives and needed help. So her and I ran that with the blessing of with the blessing and help of Pastor Mel. We still ran that. When Pastor Mel wasn't able to be there, it was Crystal. The very first night we met, a guy came in, his legs were just horrible, gangrene. And I got down on my hands and knees and I washed him and I begged him to go to the hospital. And I told him, if you don't go to the hospital, you're going to die. And in that moment, I can honestly say there probably isn't anything that I wouldn't have done to get him to go to the hospital. That's really what started God working in my life, because I saw it for myself. Pastor Mel, I wasn't a follower of God then. I was a Odinist.
As you wash someone's feet like Christ.
Yeah. Yeah, I was an Odinist, and I got up and Pastor Mel pulled me down and she whispered in my ear. She said, you might not see it, but I see more Christ in you than what you think.
You were wearing sandals in that moment, whether or not you were wearing sandals, Steve. Come on.
Right. Yeah. So, and that's what, I mean, 3 weeks later, I was baptized and a faithful follower of Christ. And my life has been a roller coaster since then, of ups and downs, and mostly ups though. This job, for one, I'm exactly where God wants me to be, doing exactly what God wants me to do. And I wholeheartedly believe that. There are other entities now that are trying to recruit me to leave here and go work for them. I think it's because those entities aren't very well liked around the state, and they see the publicity that I'm bringing the house to home, and they see the publicity that I'm getting on myself, not only for West Virginia Goes Purple, but for also PHAC and house to home in the community, and it's not my intention to leave this place until my mission is done here. And my mission is to show people that there is a way to get your life back. There is a way to take charge of your life again. And there is a way out of the darkness.
My next question, I think, is going to be where most people get captivated. What are some things that people misunderstand about homelessness and recovery and addiction and?
I would say the biggest thing people misunderstand about recovery, right? You cannot force an addict to get clean. You cannot tell an addict, if you don't get clean, this is what's going to happen. That addict has to go through the hardships, and they have to hit rock bottom, and they have to want that change. And the other thing is, if you baby an addict, you're going to bury an addict. And I hate saying it like that, but if you baby an addict, you're going to bury an addict, because all you're doing is enabling them. Let them, I know if it's your son or your daughter or your husband or wife, you don't want to see them go through those hardships. You don't want to see them go through that pain, but sometimes you have to let them go through that pain, and you have to let them lose things, let them feel that sickness that they feel every time they can't get a fix, because eventually they're going to get tired of it, and that's going to push them to change. The recovery community in Parkersburg and surrounding area is huge. If you know somebody struggling with addiction that's not ready, there's a meeting out there to support you. There's resources out there for families that deal with that. Addiction is it's a tricky thing, Recovery recovery isn't a tricky path. I mean, recovery is easy. You either use drugs or you don't use drugs. But maintaining your recovery can be tricky, because you're always going to run into those people that don't care. You know, I run into it daily here at the shelter because most of the people that come into the shelter are the people that I used to be out on the street with. So, you know, I have people coming in sometimes saying, "Hey, man, you want to go do this?" And I'm like, "Nah, sorry, buddy, that's not my life anymore." But it only takes one bad day for somebody sometimes to decide, "Hey, I know how to fix this," and take it in on their own. And as far as shedding a light on the homelessness, and I don't care who you are one mistake away from being homeless your whole life. Unfortunately, here in Parkersburg, many of the unhoused are substance abusers.
We're at the heart of the opioid epidemic.
Yeah. 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 But if you just sit down and have a conversation with them, you will come to realize that they're just like you and me. And they hate the life that they're living, but they don't know a way out. Or they've had so much trauma in their life that they don't think there's a way out. And that's where it's our job to show them that there is a way out and there is a better way.
I love that you kind of said without saying, at the end of the game, the king and the pawn go back in the same box. We all have a roof. Well, I almost guarantee 95% of the audience listening has a roof over their head. But one thing changes, we're out on the street. Appalachia is a place that is destined for great healing, but unfortunately that means there's going to be a lot of pain that we have to heal for it to be a place for healing.
Yeah.
And like Steve Ski here, I believe that in West Virginia you should have a home. Everyone in West Virginia is home. If that means a roof, we need to find a roof. That's why there's the Parkersburg Housing First Action Council, because in order for someone to build a life, they have to have a foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, that's a house. If you don't have a roof over your head, a place to mail your driver's license to, you can't do anything.
That's exactly what our shelter's providing. We also provide mail services. If somebody's unhoused and they need to get mail, I give them a letter to give the DHHR or the DMV, and they can have their mail sent here so they can get that. But exactly, everybody needs to have that foundation, because without a good foundation, the house is just going to fall.
And every developed nation on earth has proved that the way that you save people who are in active addiction or who are unhoused against their will, you give them a house. And once they have a house, they can build a life and be a productive human again. And I love that you keep mentioning there's trauma. That's not a normal behavior pattern. And no one wakes up, well, aside from me. I've got my bag packed. I'm going to stay at a camp. But most people don't say, I'm going to wake up and be homeless today.
Right.
It's a difficult thing. And if you don't understand it, there's going to be some things that get crossed. So my next question is, what do you wish policymakers and other citizens, other conscious human beings, would do to help us in this fight? We have like 200 people who are unhoused, right? 300?
I'd say we have more than that.
What do you think?
I'd say closer to 800.
In the MOV or in Parkersburg specifically?
In Parkersburg.
800 in Parkersburg.
Yeah.
I think both sites at the Rock have like 200 members, so it's 2 churches.
Yeah.
2 to 4 churches?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And I only say that because, so they do a count every year, right? But they don't get everybody. There's people that we don't know about, and there's people that don't want to be found. I mean, some of them they like this lifestyle, but as far as what policymakers can do, and I'm really glad you asked that question, and other citizens.
Yes.
As far as policymakers, I will say this, and I have to be very careful with the position I'm in at House to Home as to what I say. But I will say this. I have reached out to a policymaker in the city of Parkersburg in an email. And I said, what can I do to help the city with the unhoused population? What can I do to ease the tensions that the city and the unhoused population has? What can I do to help clean up the city? The response I got through the secretary was that they have no interest in working with anybody in the unhoused population. So
we'll do it ourselves.
Yeah. So, but as far as the citizens that care, I see it daily. Just bringing in donations of clothing. People haven't been thinking about this, but the cold weather is coming, whether we want to or not. I woke up this morning and it was 52 degrees outside.
Yeah.
And that means winter's coming. And as a shelter director, I have to look to the future. And I cannot be here 24 hours a day. As much as I'd like to be, I cannot do it. I just can't. There's always something going on in Parkersburg to help the unhoused community. I see people driving down Lynn Street and Latrobe Street all the time, just handing out food. There's plenty of grassroots organizations that are out there trying to reduce the stigma, trying to break down the barriers. And if we keep making it hard for them, we're not fixing the problem. You have to give them that opportunity to break down those barriers and reduce those stigmas in order to help the problem. And that's what I'm all about. That's what one of my other hats is with West Virginia Goes Purple. The state of West Virginia is known across the nation as the state with the highest overdose rate. Our mission at West Virginia Goes Purple is to take back our state. We want to unite all 55 counties in healing and hope around recovery.
What a terrible thing that you're doing here, Steve.
Yeah. It is led by probably one of the most charismatic and greatest people that I've ever had the privilege of meeting, Tara Mason. She founded the Hope Dealer Project in 2015 and launched the West Virginia Goes Purple campaign in 2023 and got endorsements from... Yeah.
In 2 years.
It's a yearly thing. I think the first year she said she had like 3 counties signed the proclamation. 2024 was about 5. This year we got 48 out of the 55. So, and then she appointed me director of recovery partnerships. So I put on that hat. And I don't do it alone. I have Crystal. There's 6 regions in the state. We have ambassadors in every region. So when Tara can't make it or Crystal can't make it, we rely on those ambassadors to go to those proclamation signings and stuff. They're the real boots on the ground. But I've made it my personal mission. I want to see every recovery center in the state sign a collaborative partnership pledge with West Virginia Goes Purple to stand on a united front with us. And if you work for a recovery center out there, I challenge you to become one of our collaborative partners. There's no monetary thing. All we're asking is you say, hey, we're going to stand with West Virginia Goes Purple on a unified front to combat this stigma our state has.
So we're talking about easy and free things. So one of those easy and free things is joining a group on Facebook like PHACVC, the Volunteer Corps main page. You've talked about West Virginia Goes Purple, which I'm sure has a page everywhere.
Yes, we do. We have a Facebook page.
Where else can people go to help? As far as I know House to Home has a Facebook page, but what other groups do people need to be involved with in order to affect this change?
PHAC, of course. PHAC Volunteer Corps. The Gathering is another huge one. The Gathering serves people every single day for lunch, Monday through Saturday. Friendship Kitchen, Salvation Army, Latrobe Street Mission, House to Home, of course. Moon King.
Yeah.
For a college student, Moon King does a lot. And people see him as a musician, and some people see him as enabling. But no, he is out there making a difference in lives every day. And if you can't get a hold of Moon King, you can always call the Moon King hotline, leave a message, say, hey, I want to get involved with helping. You could always call House to Home, say, hey, I want to get involved with helping. There's no place out there that serves people is going to say, no, we don't want to help. Sorry. You can go to the West Virginia Goes Purple Facebook page, West Virginia Goes Purple. We have at West Virginia Purple, we have Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We're on all platforms, as well as the Hope Dealer Project. The Hope Dealer Project is the 501c3 that West Virginia Goes Purple runs under. They started the West Virginia Goes Purple movement. You go there, and say, hey, how can I get involved with helping out turning West Virginia purple? And Tara or somebody will get you in contact with either myself or Crystal or Rhonda or somebody, just really anywhere that you see that's serving people, they're not going to turn you down. Just go call them up, say, hey, what can I do to help? Even if you have a coat, just give a coat to somebody. If you have a coat you're just going to throw away,
shoes, warm socks.
Yeah, shoes, socks, underwear. That's basically it. You don't have to give monetary items. You don't have to sit down on a park bench and have a conversation with somebody that's obviously sleeping there.
A lot of times you can tell a person is homeless because of how they are. The other day, I saw a homeless person sleeping in front of a library. So I left a coffee and a muffin because I am a human being with a conscience.
You know what's funny? Was that in Parkersburg?
I've done it a couple times.
Because I just had a guy come in and say, man, I woke up to a coffee and a donut.
Yeah, I do that sometimes. That's just something that human beings with a conscience should do.
Exactly. It's not hard to be a good human being.
Well, pot, meat, kettle. Steve, thank you for coming on and shining your light.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Man, what's suffering? Just what we create for ourselves, huh?
Yeah, but I mean, sometimes it takes somebody walking out of that fire and grabbing water and walking back in to make the change. And that's what PHAC and people around the state with the Hope Dealer Project, that's what everybody here at House to Home does. Everybody at West Virginia Goes Purple. That's what we're doing. We walked out of the fire and we walked right back in with water to help people and pull them out.
And if that doesn't inspire hope or change, I don't know what will. And if you've decided you're against this episode, please come fight me. Steve, thank you so much. I know your time is valuable. Thank you for sitting here with us today. Thank you for all the work you're doing. And thank you for being a battle buddy for me in this fight.
Anytime.
Thank you for, at very least, caring. And then I need to thank our patrons. We have Nick Horton and Atticus Thatcher, Eric Spears, Jason Grooms, Ketria Hausner, Highland Markle, Casey Shaw. Thanks, guys. If you don't have a community, come join ours. If you do have a community, bring them as healing. What are you waiting for? Final reminder, our podcast cannot be substituted for professional medical advice. If you need help now, please call 911 or text or call 988 for immediate medical intervention. If you want protracted support, you can use our code over on BetterHelp. It's betterhelp.com/NSLP. Gets you 10% off your first month. Helps the channel grow quite a bit. Healing you deserve on your terms. What's better than that? Apparently jumping off the chair. Before we get to that next call, be good to yourselves and each other. We love you, and you're worthy of that love. Peace. Excellent work.
No street lights, but we're finding our way. In the dark, but we've got something to say. Lessons learned and stories untold. Come on in, let the truth unfold. Whoa, 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 whoa. Words might cut, some might make you cry, but